The Plague is a novel by Albert Camus, who is famous for the novel The Stranger. The book tells the story of a plague outbreak in the port city of Oran, Algeria, how the city was closed due to the disease, and what happened until the plague was gone and the city was opened again. It received renewed attention due to the experience of COVID-19. So, Albert Camus' The Plague, a tale of a city's battle against the disease. Let's draw in now. The background of the novel is the port city of Oran, situated on the Algerian coast in the 1940s. Small and peaceful city, but with lively inhabitants, making it a favorite among tourists. In this city, there was a doctor named Bernard Rieu. One April morning, Dr. Rieu nearly stepped on a dead rat as he left his office. Dr. Rieu informed Mr. Michel, the building manager, that there was a rat, but Mr. Michel dismissed it as a prank, stating that the building was not a place where rats would appear. However, that same evening, Dr. Rieu witnessed a rat vomiting blood and dying in the same building. Mr. Michel found this strange and informed him that he had discovered more dead rats. After some time, Dr. Rieu sent his wife, who had fallen ill a year earlier, to a hospital for care. Then, upon returning after seeing his wife off, Dr. Rieu noticed that the number of dead rats was increasing. There were hundreds of dead rats discovered in large factories, and dead rat bodies were piling up on the streets. Later, Mr. Michel asked Dr. Rieu for a checkup, complaining of severe pain in his neck, armpits, and groin. Dr. Rieu briefly examined Mr. Michel and asked him to monitor his temperature, mentioning that he would do a more examination in the afternoon. At noon, before heading to Mr. Michel, Dr. Rieu received a call from Mr. Grant, who worked at the city hall. Mr. Grant told him that someone tried to kill himself in the next room, but he saved his life. He asked Dr. Rieu to come and check on the person's condition. Dr. Rieu went to see a man named Mr. Cotard, who had attempted suicide, and confirmed that he was okay. Mr. Cotard asked Dr. Rieu not to inform the police, but Dr. Rieu refused his request. Instead, he simply requested to delay the investigation for a few days, and then hurried off to Mr. Michel. Mr. Michel's temperature was 39.5 degrees Celsius, and he was continuously vomiting with swollen limbs in his throat, arms, and legs. Unable to determine the cause of the illness, Dr. Rieu called Dr. Richard, the chairman of the Oran Medical Association, to inquire. Dr. Richard confirmed that there were two patients with the same symptoms. Dr. Rieu simply asked Mrs. Michel to keep an eye on Mr. Michel, but the next morning, Mr. Michel's temperature rose to 40 degrees Celsius, and he continued to vomit and experience pain. Recognizing the seriousness of Mr. Michel's condition, Dr. Rieu called for an ambulance for treatment, but Mr. Michel passed away in the ambulance, uttering the word "rats." Reports of patients with symptoms similar to those of Mr. Michel increased in Oran, and within a few days, the number of deaths multiplied. It became clear that it was a plague. Dr. Castel, a colleague doctor, met Dr. Rieu and told him it seemed like the plague. However, they were cautious about using the term plague, as it had claimed many lives. Then, Mr. Grant, who worked in the Statistics Bureau, compiled the death toll and informed Dr. Liu that the number of deaths was increasing. Dr. Liu convened the health committee at the town hall and deliberated with the doctors. The doctors were concerned that using the word plague would cause confusion, and they were also worried about the responsibility associated with implementing corresponding preventive measures. However, Dr. Liu spoke the severity of the disease he had witnessed and warned that citizens could be in danger if action was not taken. Eventually, the city began to take action. Numerous measures were implemented, including an emphasis on cleanliness, mandatory reporting by families once a diagnosis was made by a doctor, isolation of patients, and disinfection of areas where patients had been. Dr. Castell started to develop a serum treatment, and Dr. Liu continued treating patients. But that didn't mean the overall daily life of the city had changed. Still, the commuter trains were crowded, the streets were bustling in the evening, and people lined up in front of the movie theater. However, the governor's office, which realized the severity of the situation, issued an order to the municipal authority to declare a state of plague and close the city. Mr. Cotard was enjoying this situation. Having committed a crime, Mr. Cotard knew that in the cause of the plague, there was little chance of the police apprehending him. However, everyone except for him soon realized that they were trapped inside the city as soon as all the doors were closed. Perceptions of doctors also changed. They were once healers, but now they have become announcers of the plague. When anyone received a diagnosis of the plague, they had to either die or recover before their family could see them. Consequently, if a family member fell ill, they tended to conceal it, leading to situations where doctors and police forcibly isolated hidden patients. One day, Father Pandur, whom even the irreligious respected, delivered a sermon. He said that God sent a plague to Orang as a punishment for humanity. People began to feel trapped in the city along with the plague, unsure of what sin had brought it upon them. The inconvenience of the city's closure shifted from discomfort to outright fear among the citizens. The severity of the disease was getting worse. The death toll continued to rise, and there was even a shortage of graves, leading to the creation of temporary crematoriums. There was a lack of manpower. At this time, a man named Jean Taro, who connections with Dr. Liu, organized a sanitation brigade. Mr. Taro, who had temporarily come to Orang from elsewhere, played a significant role in the organization, aiding in the transportation of patients, the handling of corpses, and the compilation of statistics on the disease. Alongside Taro, there were also Mr. Rangbert, who came from outside the city, and Grant, who was skilled in statistics. They collaborated with Dr. Liu, continuously sharing information. The plague remained formidable. While the death rate showed a slight flattening, it did not decrease. Even individuals close to Dr. Liu died. Jacques, the son of Magistrate Othon, tried to cast the serum but perished, and even Dr. Richard passed away. Thus, a prevailing sense of pessimism enveloped Orang. The food supply became increasingly challenging. As prices rose, it became difficult for the poor to obtain food, while the West faced no such problem. The municipal authorities anticipated that the plague would subside with the onset of winter, but as it persisted, hope began to diminish. Then, Mr. Grant became infected. Dr. Liu anticipated his death upon examination. However, miraculously, he survived. Following this, suddenly recovered patients began to be reported one after another, and reports of the effectiveness of castor serum, which had previously shown little effect, began to emerge from various sources. The momentum of the plague, which seemed eternal, statistically began to diminish. People were cautious, but they gradually felt the weakening of the plague and sensed that the day when the city's door would open was drawing near. However, Mr. Kotaro was resentful, persistently hoping for the continued spread of the plague. Mr. Kotaro advocated pessimism to people, but the disease continued to decrease, reviving the city's functions. Mr. Kotaro ran away from the police and was eventually captured. Just days before the city's gate opened, Taro, who organized the sanitation brigade, died for the plague. Also, while recovering in the hospital, Dr. Ryu received news of his wife's passing. As the city's gates opened and festivities commenced, Dr. Ryu didn't believe it was over. He didn't see it as a victory over the plague. With vigilance against the possibility of its return, the novel comes to a close. The Plague is a story that showed how people act and feel during tough times, especially when faced with a deadly disease. It talks about what it means for individuals to be isolated, how scary it is to have a plague spreading, and what it's like to be stuck in a city where no one can go in or out. It's so detailed and realistic that it feels like reading the news from when the plague actually happened. Instead of just being a thrilling story about the disease, it makes you think about life, what people believe, and how they act together as a group. It gives you a lot to think about, making you stop and consider things as you read. Rather than just following the plot, the plague encourages readers to think deeply about life, what it means to be human, and how we deal with tough situations. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll come back with other maps.